I heard them coming. As I rocked on my knees, the floor was cold and I was all alone except for that storm coming. This was no normal storm that would pass by quickly. This was a storm where someone would get hurt, and that someone was me. I was screaming and weeping. I did nothing. I didn't know nothing. I begged for my life as they dragged me out of that cell. The punches were striking me with tremendous force, and they continued to beat me without mercy. They shoved me down the stairs, and once I was standing at the bottom, I spit out my tooth, a white tooth. God, only if my skin was white like that tooth. The more they struck me, the more I whimpered, but I could not be heard, for the fever was too high. As I was pushed out the station door, the lynch mob had their first. I began the longest walk with the shortest distance of my life. I would end up swinging. Help me, God.
As I stood beside my cot, I could hear the mob breaking in. What a tremendous noise. I didn't want to hear yelling and screaming, but I did. Never had my ears been so violated as this day. The men sawed and sawed at the iron door bars. It would only be a moment, and I would begin my journey. Never had I seen such evil in the face of man. I could look down their throats as they yelled. The fear building up inside me, I wet my pants. God, please, let me leave this earth with some dignity, some grace. I soon was pulled out of the cell, and my beating and torture began. Fists hitting me like I was some bag of dirt. I wish I were. I would be treated with more respect, more kindness.
I didn't want it to end. I knew life would be hard, but living it would be easier than my destiny, my steps before me. How could this be? Why me? I hadn't done a thing, and I was accused of this terrible crime. I knew better than to touch a white woman. We all did. These men taking me and giving me their lynch mob justice were crazed with anger, and I was full of fear. Let there be one good man or woman to save me, Lord.
They ripped my clothes almost off my back. I begged for my life as they dragged my body down the street with all punches. White knuckles pounded me, and a river of spit covered my shivering skin, my black skin, and my sentence. Thousands of white people, and twice that in eyes of green, blue, and brown, like my eyes, seeing eyes, watched as they put that rope around my head. I screamed and begged for better. My breath was gone, and the warm feeling of comfort came to me in the last moments before my departure. I was hanging about 3 feet off the ground and spotlighted by many cars. Blood spattered on the faces of those below me, red blood, like their blood. Nobody noticed. A breath could not be purchased. I twitched.
They threw me to the pole I would end my life on. I pleaded with my captives. I proclaimed my innocence. But joy and anger were hot, and reason and compassion had departed. A sailor came forward with a proud stance to put the noose around my neck. It was with great pride that he delivered the honor. The mob screamed their approval, and I was gone, yanked up and out of this earthly bond. If only a bird's song would greet me in the morning.
Oh my God, I could see them in front of me. My brothers had departed, all but the twitch. My eyes were as wide as a man's could be, my fear staggering. A white woman looked at me as she tried to stop them from this action. She was one voice of reason in a sea of conflict. Her eyes reflected my future. I turned and saw my brothers riding those ropes to the end of their lives. As they yanked me to my death, fast and furious, I raised my hand skyward to the heavens, and my life finished there with a twitch. A ringing in my ears gave way to peace.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Simonson. This is a special edition of Final Edition on KUWS, Teaching History, Literacy, and Tolerance, the Clayton Jackson McGhie Memorial in Our Schools. Our guests today are community activist Henry Banks, curriculum co-authors Catherine Nachbar and David Beard, and Clayton Jackson McGhie Memorial Board co-chair Gail Schoenfeld. Welcome, everyone. We have a crowded room today. So we're talking about a new curriculum that's been developed, and I guess I want to just start with where the idea came from for the curriculum. Evidently, somebody saw a need.
I can start with that one. In 2001, as a teacher at Central High School, I was fairly new to the district, and I had 10th grade students, and the 1920s are taught in class. And in the 1920 in Duluth, Minnesota, a very tragic event took place, and I felt the need to teach the children about the topic. So I went to talk to administrators about a particular article to use and what their reaction was to this article. A reporter covered the story about the Duluth lynchings, and she started asking just kids in the community, is this material being covered in class? And a teacher's name came up, which I, of course, didn't know this, but then just randomly one day, I happened to meet a man, Henry Banks, actually. And I walked into a store that he had, a business, and I had to go back frequently to make payments on an art piece. Don't make a lot of money as a new teacher, and we had a lot of dialogue and conversation. And he called and asked if I'd like to be a part of an organization. And this organization was very grassroots. I was honored to be called and asked, and felt connected to Henry. And so I started to attend meetings, and students started to attend meetings. And we started to have a curriculum team at school. Long story short, I guess, the students thought that the material covered in class was important. They were energized by the community meetings, and they started to create a curriculum team. And for over a year, students would meet very early. Several Clayton Jackson members would come up and meet with the students. They did research, and they created a rough draft curriculum, which is where we got the idea. So.
Wow. Mr. Banks, take us back to that day when Catherine walked in and...
Wow. That's a long time ago, but it was, for me, that was an indication that Duluth and the people in the city could change just because of the opportunity that I had to interact with Catherine opened up so many other opportunities in the community because of her connections in the school system and in the community. It just kind of opened the door. And so we started making the process happen. We started including more and more people, and here we are today.
Were you at all a little leery at the beginning, of such a sensitive topic and how this was going to be handled? Would it be handled complete enough, sensitive enough?
I was actually never leery because I knew that this area had been a changed area, but we needed to have an infrastructure in order to break down the barriers that existed around this particular issue. And so when we all came together as a small group at Washington Center, we were able to start that process of healing just within our group. And so I was never leery. I just knew this was something that was profound, that could happen in Duluth, that could put us on the map internationally, and it did. But it brought us together as a community, and I think that in and of itself is remarkable.
Catherine is a high school teacher. You're teaching at Central.
Correct.
Okay.
And East.
And is this a high school curriculum then, or is it meant for a broader age bracket?
It can be broader. It's meant for upper secondary students and also college instructors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Could be used in a first-year composition or topics class as well.
Okay. So do the schools buy the curriculum, or how do they get access to it?
Well, actually, the curriculum is not available exactly at this moment. It's at the printer right now. So by March 1st, it will be ready to go, and it will be available to any teacher, any school district who's interested in purchasing it. The reason I'm so excited about it is that we get calls all the time from classroom teachers requesting members of the board to come and talk to their classes about the memorial, the history of it, and relating our history to current day problems with respect to racism in the community. And so I think this, I think a lot of teachers are really looking for a tool to help them teach the significance of our memorial in Duluth and what it means to people today. So I think it's just really exciting.
What do you see as the current state of educating our students on race issues? Is it being, is it there? Is it being handled? Is it being ignored? Is it somewhere in the middle?
I would just say we have a long way to go yet. Yes. But I think this is a very excellent start. This is a very volatile issue, or could be a volatile issue, as we've been dealing with racism and other forms of oppression for many, many years. This is a good start for Duluth and for this region, and I think with the completion of this curriculum, it not only is going to help us talk about racism and other forms of injustice, it's going to open up opportunities to talk about oppression as it relates to anybody that experiences oppression.
It also reaches, I think, a national audience and a national moment, insofar as in the last few years we've seen traveling exhibitions of lynching photography, which have put this history on a national stage without an adequate amount of material to tell teachers what to do with this new material and how to integrate these kinds of historical events into the classroom. And so this curriculum makes a definite contribution to dealing with that national moment and make it accessible to teachers.
Do you think the curriculum has what do I want to say? Is the impact greater here in the Northland because this incident happened here, or can it be, is the demand for the curriculum and this type of education broader than that?
The piece that I think is important to look at, this is just a start. It's it's like a scratch on the surface of many things that need to be addressed. But when you look at the date 1920, post-World War I, it is astonishing to look at the number of lynchings that took place across the country. And this time period is referred to as the Black Holocaust, and this curriculum can't meet all of the needs that are there. It is, a supplemental material. But, that is a moment in time that reaches across the nation. And just within a handful of years ago, I believe 2005, but on the Senate floor, to have a resolution of an apology for something that's been happening across the nation, in the early 20th century, is a marker for students to see the connection of, the 21st century to the 20th century, because there's a gap. And so again, this is just a tool, but indicators like that can be used in the classroom to make that connection.
This is a special edition of Final Edition, and our guests are community activist Henry Banks, curriculum co-authors Catherine Nachbar and David Beard, and Clayton Jackson McGhie Memorial Board co-chair Gail Schoenfelder.
And your husband, too. Yeah. I spoke to Pope Wright's class recently about this. He wanted a reporter's perspective covering this. I covered the dedication of the headstones in 1991. And I knew it would be a difficult topic, but I didn't realize until I spoke to this class how difficult it was to speak about this and all the pitfalls that you have to come across when you're talking about this. Even Michael Fido's, the name of his book originally, they were just niggers. You say that out loud, that's very difficult to do. And you look around the room and you think, what are these students thinking? How difficult is this to teach this, but to teach it fully, without, skirting the topic, to be honest about it.
We don't, if I could say this, we don't use the word nigger anymore, typically. You might hear kids saying the word, but a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, there was an actual ceremony, I believe in New York City, to rid our communities of using that word. And so those changes, I think, are symptomatic of some of these things that are going on as it relates to the curriculum, as it relates to how we treat each other, and how we even interact with each other. And so I hope I'm making sense here, but I think it's that we have to change the way we talk, and we have to learn to respect each other. I think that's what we're trying to do here with the curriculum and with other things that are going on as it relates to the work in dismantling racism or anti-racism issues.
I can only speak to teaching it with university students, but I can say that the number one stumbling block in dealing with a university student is the presumption is this kind of thing happened with other people somewhere else. They consider themselves urban, they consider themselves sophisticated, and somehow lynching was a phenomenon of someone other than my kind of person. And that becomes the hardest thing to get them to recognize, that in fact this was a city of 100,000 people in 1920, and it was a city, and it still happened here. It's not that different.
I'd like somebody to just talk about the curriculum itself. What will these students be doing when they enter this program?
There are reading pieces and primary sources, and there are sheets if the teacher so chooses. There are worksheets, if you will, to align with those primary sources, but discussion questions. The hope is that it creates discussion, and you can never just give a piece of curriculum to somebody and say, teach this as is. That just doesn't work. Teaching is a craft, and so hopefully they will be able to find pieces, primary sources, facts, documents, links that will enhance what they're doing in the classroom.
If it can be said, the curriculum asks the students and the teachers to do a couple of things. The first is integrate what happened in Duluth to a larger national historical framework, the kind of social movements of the time. Asks the students to read critically the newspaper accounts of the time and understand how the biases of the time are reflected in those texts. Read later accounts by community member Heidi Bach-Hansen, who was kind enough to let us use her pieces in the curriculum, and from a 50-year vantage point say what changes about how we tell the story, and then to examine the memorial as another way of telling the story, and the piece that you've just heard as another way of telling the story. And finally, I guess then, and this is Catherine's expertise more than mine, to carry it into discussions of contemporary issues.
Correct. And if there's ever a revision process, that would be a great place to expand.
Do you consider the teaching history and tolerance to be the ultimate silver lining that terrible storm cloud from the lynching of these 3 black men in Duluth in 1920?
I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible. The hope is, bring the truth to light is something I've been thinking about with the creation of the curriculum. And when you look at history, it's sometimes hard to dig deep into those trenches of history and find pieces that are not, that are tragic events. But if you look at who and what we do today, these events have shaped why there are, why racism is still an issue. And so trying to pull that to the present is crucial.
What happened to change things? I mean, I grew up in the Duluth School District. I never heard a word of it. Graduated in 75. I mean, I heard a word of it from my grandfather, but not in the school system. When did that change? Why did that change? I mean, is it just because it's a newer generation that is more enlightened, or what happened?
Well, I think when I moved here from Missouri many years ago, the first thing I learned when I moved here was about the lynching. That came to me from another African American person, making sure that I knew that this occurred in our community. But that stayed with me all the way through college, and I felt that I wasn't doing enough. And just simply one day I said, we need to do something. We need to bring this to light. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out a way to make our community an inclusive community of every citizen that's here. And so that gave me the impetus to put a small group of people together and just start that conversation. And so I think that's where some of that change happened. Not that other people weren't doing things in regard to that particular incident, but this was a way to say, hey, folks, we're not going to be blacking anybody's eyes. We're not against white people. We're not saying any of that, but we really need to address this issue so that we can move on, so we can start that healing process, so that we can open up opportunities for everybody if they want to be successful in this community. And so that's how that really started, I think.
Racism is, it seems to be such a learned attitude and behavior. Can it be unlearned?
Can it be unlearned? Wow, I think it can be. But we always are going to be dealing with that particular issue because that seems to be what keeps us separate. It always comes back to race. Yes, it can be unlearned, but, a few steps forward, a few steps back. Things are changing, but are they really changing? I think that would be the real question.
I just wanted to add that racism is the ignorance that is prevailing out through most of the world in different ways. Not truth, it is the lie. And the lies are accepted. So the racism feeds from those lies. What we have to do, as this concern is, educate and give people the truth to stamp out those lies. We all came in this world equal. We're all going to leave here the same. We need to cut out all the injections that put people down, demean people, deprive them. When I go about the community giving classes for the Clayton Jackson McGhie board, the first thing I tell people when I speak to them is, I'm not here in your face. I'm not here to demean you. I'm not here accusatory. I'm here to hope to bring you some light, to get you out of the ignorance that you've been fed. Everywhere I go, I've had great success. People are very receptive to hearing you speak. So the truth is out there, but the devil's just been here with his lie a little longer. We're working on it. Thank you.
That was Perry Kennedy, who's been a community activist in the Northland as well. Thank you for that. Do you have expectations for this curriculum? Do you have a sense from feedback that you've been getting as you've been writing it and developing it, what kind of demand you're going to have for it? Any ideas?
That's hard to gauge. The hope is that once word gets out, teachers will be willing to look at it and also give feedback, because this is an individual statement, but I believe curriculum is a continual process of revision, and there's always things that can be added, and there's certainly pieces still needed in the curriculum. So feedback from educators will be critical to offer additional information that will be even better for the next draft.
I'm hopeful that this will go statewide because this is Minnesota history. And so I'm hopeful that teachers in the southern part of the state, in the central part of the state, hopefully in Wisconsin and surrounding states, will want to purchase this curriculum because this is, it goes far and wide. It goes further than Duluth, it goes wider than Duluth, but I think we can all learn from this remarkable piece of information that's out there.
And a step further beyond expectations, you must have dreams for its impact in the area?
I don't know about a dream for its impact, but I think if a teacher picks it up and decides that the week and a half worth of activities we've included aren't for them, but in the process of reading it, they reconfigure what they've been teaching in American history or in language arts for the last 5 or 10 years, that would be impact enough to make me a very happy man.
I'd like to just ask each one of you to say what you hope a student, or what you think a student might bring away from this curriculum, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. But let's just go around the room.
My hope when students are hopefully given the opportunity to look at some of the pieces, that they are able to make connections to the fact that an event that has happened impacted a community greatly, but it is their place in the community and in life to make an impact themselves that can be hopefully positive towards examining racism and the role it plays in their life. That is my impact, that they see the connection of history to today and that there is a link.
As the language arts person here, I'm deeply interested in their ability to read historical texts, to understand them critically, and then to respond to them, not just as texts, but in locating themselves in the contemporary scene.
I guess my hope would be that it's just the beginning of a journey for the students to continue learning and to continue examine their own thinking and their own feelings, and to really think seriously about how they can to make a difference, to make positive change.
If this curriculum will say to all, as Martin said, let's stop the judgment. Color isn't the thing, it's what is the character of the person. If we can do this, we'll have done something with this curriculum. Thank you.
And I'm hopeful that the kids will take what they've learned to their homes and to their environments, to share with their families, to have some discussion at home about this very important issue in our community, and hopefully we'll bring that conversation even further and further on.
Thank you so much. Very interesting half hour of discussion about this curriculum. For more information, you can go to the website. It's claytonjacksonmcghie.org. And you can also pick up the telephone if you'd like to, and simply call them at 336-2990. You've been listening to a special edition of Final Edition. Our guests today have been the community activist Henry Banks, curriculum co-authors Catherine Nachbar and David Beard, Clayton Jackson McGhie Memorial Board co-chair Gail Schoenfelder, and community activist Perry Kennedy, along with Mike Simonson from Wisconsin Public Radio. I'm Jennifer Simonson. Enjoy the evening.
Our seclusion was intense.
Our anger at what had happened was without parallel.
To die in vain for something we did not do, how painful.
Every man takes his first and last steps.
The spirit of forgiveness and hope did not die on that day.
The matters and madness of men cannot always be explained.
As we lie together in our earthly graves side by side, we know that our deaths were not in vain.
From this day forward, we will be alive with hope for the future, to see racism and hatred die with those who hold it close.
And new thoughts of individual love and dignity that progresses across the land will be in the hearts of the newborn.
A spring rushes over us and blesses us all and provides us with freedom.
Freedom to sing, freedom to dance, freedom to be.
As we walk through this valley of light, with pain forgiven but not forgotten, our song penetrates our spiritual core, and we walk side by side.
As we sit on the edge of eternity with a basket of fruit harvested from our lives.
Let there never again be a basket of such harsh reality, a basket of bitter fruit.
Step forward without grief and fill your lungs with love and